And now I believe we are live. Fantastic. So, this is another session of Connect Live. And this week we have Phil Seamark. Hello, Phil.
Hello, Ben. How are you? Thanks for
I'm
inviting
very,
me.
you're absolutely welcome. It's my pleasure to have you here, mate. I'm looking forward to the chat to learn a couple of things about you and what you do and that type of stuff. And I always say this because what I really like about, hey, Daniel. What I really like about a lot of these sessions is that I learn a lot about the people who I'm talking to, of course, right? And I tend to, read about the person in advance and see what they've done, just so I am aware of the person. However, what I was completely unaware of, and I only learned this from a tweet by Bernard, he said, I bet DAX Games, which is definitely going to talk about DAX Games, and honey production will have their place. I'm curious about the honey production part. Do you produce honey?
So where I live in New Zealand, I'm in a rural area, so I've got quite a lot of space. For those who do hectares, about just over 5 hectares. For those who do acres, is about 13 acres. So not quite farm size, but plenty of room for a lot of outdoor activity. And the area that I live is surrounded by this quite unusual plant that's unique to New Zealand called the manuka tree. And supposedly, I'm not necessarily convinced on this myself, but supposedly the honey that gets made from the manuka tree is very good for treating wounds. It has good antiseptic properties. Plus, it tastes really, really nice. So, it'd be silly not to actually, get some beehives up there myself. So I got on the internet, paired up with a local commercial beekeeper, and let them up the back of my property where they put a whole bunch of hives, and I just make sure I always get plenty of honey for myself. So I go through it. It's great stuff. But I do have some tips for anyone who is interested in honey if you do want to go down that path. But
see, this can be a natural extension of your blog, Phil. DAX tips and honey tips. Perhaps.
Maybe. I probably only have a handful of honey tips, but no, it's great.
Well, I only have
put it on the breakfast. I'm actually about 90 years old, so you can see the benefits of buying this manuka honey. So
I didn't want to bring it up, mate, but yeah, it makes sense now. But I mean, you only have a handful of honey tips. I only have a handful of DAX tips, so it's perfectly fine. You just use what you've got,
Well, the main one that even my beekeeper didn't know was when you buy honey from the supermarket, and you can buy it when it's golden, runny, and you sort of put it on a spoon and it drips out and it looks really nice. That's the kind of honey I quite like. But you can also buy the honey that's creamed. It's sort of solid, and you sort of have to dig into it with a spoon. Now, what I didn't realize, and it's important that you use the right vessel, but if you boil the honey, it converts that solid, creamy honey into the runny honey. Now, I only recommend you do this if you're putting the creamy solid honey in a glass jar. So you put it in a pot, pour some boiling water in, not enough to break the glass, come back half an hour later, and it's just pours beautifully. So just that's my one tip for the day. I won't say any more about honey, I promise.
This is perfectly fine, mate. Perfectly fine. This is what I'm talking about before. People always ask, so what do you want to talk about today? Nice and random, right? Who thought we'd start this conversation with honey tips? I didn't. So there you go. Why is it dark at your place, Phil, and it's light over here?
I see that's Jeff. So the reason why that's dark is because the room I actually work is a bit of a borrowed junk dumping ground. I am building a new place, and normally when I turn my video on, I have the ability to blur out my background. But this particular tool, I can't find that. I'm not a video expert, so I quickly panicked and did a little bit of a tidy up, turned off the background so it wasn't so distracting.
I never thought about that because I use Restream, by the way, and I really like it, but I never thought once about this ability to blur a background, because I used to use like XSplit, where it was, but I found XSplit to be like really, really drain. So all I could hear in the background was this, my computer trying not to explode. So that's fine if I'm doing like a recorded session, but on a live session, this noise in the background, it's just too much. So I stick with my background.
Well, some of the people on my team, they spend a lot of money on video equipment, and they've got near production quality stuff, which is amazing. Me, I'm cheap. I just still use the little webcam in my laptop and nothing fancy.
It's
Maybe
fair
a
enough.
microphone, but that's about it. So,
So you're not quite at the guy in a cube setup yet with the
not quite. When you see his
huge.
tweets, showing his setup, and I was actually booked to go and stay at Adam's place for a trip before all the travel lockdown went. I was going to be, I
Okay.
think, like, crashing in that room with all the all the equipment. So, he was very
So
trusting because I
you
invited him
leave
out
and the
to go
bag's a
to
bit heavier, right?
it. Mm.
Yeah, I think he even has like a teleprompter. I'm sure I saw a teleprompter. That was just kind of like amazing setup to me. Oh, yeah.
Oh, looks pretty impressive. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just,
But I mean, they do amazing work. When you watch their
oh yeah.
videos, the production quality is just stunning. I just it's tiring thinking about trying to replicate the kind of output that they do. It's amazing. So
So yes, so this Phil is guy in the hut. Yeah,
ah,
harsh, but yeah, very good.
in jokes.
So you in Power BI, all that kind of stuff. I first saw your name, if I'm getting the date right, was probably 2017. Don't be offended by that. I started
Mhm.
using Power BI in 2017 to 2016. I can't remember. Egal. Not important. I saw Dax Minesweeper. Was that
Mhm.
back then? Or am I too early? But I think it was 2017. I saw Dax Minesweeper.
Certainly a few years ago. Mm.
Yeah, okay. And I looked at it, and I think this was at that point, I just kind of worked out that, I'd calculate and do other stuff. So, like, my DAX, they didn't exist at that point. And I saw DAX Minesweeper, and I opened it, and I played it, and I was like, I will never, never be able to do this. And a few years later, I've been using DAX for quite a few years now, and I still can never, ever, ever be able to do that. It's so impressive. I wonder, where did the idea come from? Did you have like a project to think, I want to make a game? It's so awesome, but
Um,
abstract.
I can't actually remember that far. I mean, I I was quite busy and active on the community site, the community.powerbi.com, and a lot of the reason I was doing that was to teach myself DAX, because I find that one of the fastest ways that I learn is to try and use that other people post, in the
Yeah.
form of a question or whatever. Like, how do I do this running total, or how do I do this period comparison, for example? And at the start, I had no idea, and I had to just watch the other answers that people were posting, and
Okay.
I would learn from that. And then eventually, I got a bit braver and started, suggesting my own answers. They weren't necessarily the right answers, but over time, I stubbornly, liking a challenge, slowly got better and better, and quite enjoyed that. And I was getting reasonably good at DAX. But then at some point, I figured I needed a different challenge, because the questions I was seeing perhaps on community.powerbi.com, there wasn't a lot of variety. So I thought, I'll just go out and just push DAX and see what you can actually do, because I had no idea. I didn't know where where you would actually get blocked or hit walls, for example.
Yeah.
And the first game I think I was truly awful. It was a version of blackjack. You could only play one hand, but the idea was just try to sort of generate a few random numbers to represent cards, and implement some logic so that the computer player or house would know when to play and hold, and I'm not using the right terms, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Play
And then
cards.
when I put it together with a little bit of a visual layer, like a nice background, and trying to use graphics for the card, it was, even though it was quite a bad game, like, you couldn't play multiple hands or bet and accumulate money or anything like that, because I was starting to discover some of the things that you weren't able to do via DAX. It was quite interesting and fun. And I wrote a blog and just explained how I approached it, and tried to do my best to explain how the DAX worked. And I quite enjoyed that. So after a couple of weeks, I thought, all right, what's another challenge? And I can't remember what the next one was. It might have been a Tic Tac Toe Game, or noughts and crosses, depending on where you're from. And
True.
that was interactive. You could start your game in any position, and the computer would play back at you, and you could then make a move, and the computer would respond, etc. And there were a whole bunch of ways that you could approach that, and quite like thinking about it. So for a little bit, I got on a bit of a roll. And Minesweeper was one of the first ones as well. And there's some quite neat decks trying to work out, for those familiar with the Minesweeper game, that when you click on a blank square, you have to reveal a really irregular pattern of all the other adjacent blank squares, to the border where the mines are, and obviously keeping track of squares that need to show a number. It even got to the point where it seemed like a quite interesting presentation, and I did a few fun SQL Saturdays where
Cool.
I think I call it Wacky Decks or Crazy Decks was the name of the title. And I would
I
just
like it.
stand up in front of usually a very, very small room of people brave enough to hear about completely useless things to do with decks. But I mean, in a roundabout way, it helped me learn more, and also helped me really understand, where the boundaries were, I guess, with decks. And I sort of finished those ones in a series with those. There was a couple of map-based games. There was a two-dimensional map game where you could navigate your way around a series of walls.
Okay.
And then, for fun, I converted that into a 3D version of the game as well. So you could actually, Doom style or Quake style, move through a maze, which was effectively just reading in a CSV file. So you could go to Excel, and Excel was nice because you could format the rows and columns really nicely. Just put X's where you wanted walls and gaps where you didn't want walls. Save the CSV file, and it would read in a map, and you'd have this 3D world that you could move around. And this was 100% all in DAX inside Power BI. Now, I've never once said that DAX or Power BI is a gaming engine. It's truly awful. But for every one of the games, I did spend a lot of time just writing up, going step by step, saying, here's how this bit works, here's how that bit works, in my words, and hopefully that's quite
But this
fun.
is Sorry, continue.
Sorry?
No, I was just saying. No, your turn. You go for it.
Oh, and I was just going to say, someone who's on this call, who was one of your previous guests, actually, Kerry, she's building a game, which picked my ears up, and we reached out, and so I'm helping a little bit on the DAX, but I've got good news that I think she'll be having one of her good SVG games coming out shortly. So I'm looking forward to that. I always like to see other people doing this kind of stuff in DAX, and
I mean, because you also said that it's like people like to see whatever. I think you said you used the word pointless or something similar. But I often think that the pointless tasks, for want of a better word, are the most interesting, because they kind of make you think in a much more creative way. And there's always the number of things that you're okay, oh yeah, but I'll do it, but I don't really need it now. But then you remember that you have it somewhere when a challenge comes, not a challenge, but like a standard work issue or a standard DAX or whatever issue. It forces you to learn outside of this traditional like learning environment, which is, I need this, or let's just read a book. I mean, I'm saying this in a derogatory way. I'm not really one for reading. I'm not going to say books. That makes me sound like an idiot. But I'm not one for reading like textbooks, if you will. I wouldn't really probably ever pick up like a DAC book, because that's just not how I learn. So actually, it reminds me of a maths teacher I had when I was like probably in middle school, so like 10 years old. I mean, I'm bad at maths. I've always been bad at maths, which is really helpful because my wife is an accountant and her office is on the other side of that door. So quite often during the day, I'll be working on a calculation, and I'll need my wife's help to check to make sure that the numbers actually make sense. But yeah, I forgot my point. My point was, I do this all the time. I just talk and I forget my point. But the general point was that it kind of inspires you to go out and think of like some more interesting ways to learn the thing that you should be doing for your job, if that makes sense. I don't really consider anything as pointless, because if it's fun, you're learning, and at some point you're going to use that.
Yeah, no, I agree. It forces you to look at it from a different perspective, and it can be quite torturous, because you can sit bolt upright at 2:00 in the morning, going, "Aha! I know how to solve now that thing that's been bothering me a little bit." And then, do I go back to sleep, or do I get up and actually, finish it off? Or, if I go back to sleep, do I risk forgetting? Waking up in the morning, going, "Oh, what was that solution again?" So
true. One of the benefits of home office is the fact that we can just jump on our computer now, or I like to do anyway, jump on my computer when I have a solution at like 11 o'clock at night or whenever. Ah, yes, that's right. I've been thinking about it. You've been in the shower or something, or where you are, or whilst brushing teeth. Couldn't have said it better. And yeah, it's okay. I have a solution. I'm gonna go and use it now. It's cool. And then you use it, and it's fun. Someone mentioned before, 1 second. I haven't been ignoring the comments. I usually put them up somewhere and talk about them. But someone mentioned before about you working in the cat team as well, which is a point that I wanted to bring up. I mentioned it before because what is that? So I know generally the cat team is, it's a big deal, and you do big work. But I'm just curious. I'm curious as to what the cat team is and what's a day in the life of someone who works in the cat team. Please fill me in.
Well, just remember, this is from my perspective. If you ask another member of the cat team, they might answer in a completely different way.
Of course.
So I think officially we're a team that sits within the Power BI team. And CAT stands for Customer Advisory Team, although I tend to like to think of it as a customer advocate team. So we do work with very large enterprise customers. And if you think, the very large, 500 biggest customers on the planet, the vast majority, I think 97% of them, use Power BI in some shape or form. And when these very big organizations use Power BI, obviously they're going to be spending a lot of money, and Microsoft want to make sure that they're getting good value for that investment. So they want to make sure that they've got people that work closely with those very large organizations to just try and make the experience as smooth as possible. And it's win-win, because what can happen is, when we go into a large organization and, and they're all different, there's a lot of similarities, but they all have something unique that they need help with. And to get it working really nicely for them, we also learn, what could we do to make Power BI better for people like this, or for customers like this. And it's just, we can then go back to the Power BI team as a whole and say, look, we've got a bit of a common theme here. We probably need to do some more work in this particular area or that particular area. And then that sits on top of the ideas forum. So, a huge amount of the the way Power BI gets evolved and develops comes from those votes on ideas.powerbi.com. But we also need to make sure that our enterprise customers are listened to as well. But so we're a very small team. It's when I started, there were only about 9 or 10 on the team. We have grown a little bit now, but we certainly can't scale to spend an awful lot of time on these customers. And I think I've even heard mention we technically cover about 20,000 commercial customers around the world, and we just can't do that. So we all have different strengths, and what we try to do is scale our learnings and knowledge through things like blogs and presentations and documents and white papers and all sorts. And most of you have heard of, Adam and Patrick, who do the wonderful Guy on a Cube. I mean, last time I looked, they're pushing near 250,000 subscribers, which is just amazing. I mean, that's not,
it is amazing,
optimized for enterprise customers. That's optimized for everyone. But I can't remember ever going into a new customer, having a conversation with them without them mentioning, this. We've all watched the Guy on a Cube videos; they're fantastic, and they do that on their own time. That's not actually part of their job to generate that, which is even more amazing.
Didn't realize that. That is even more
but
impressive.
I probably haven't said too much more. But yeah, as I said, we all have different areas of expertise. I tend to get given the DAX and the data modeling work, mostly because anyone else on the team, they hear the word DAX and they run a mile.
That's fine.
But I do remember a year or so before I started on the CAT team, I'm sure I saw a photo on Twitter of the members of the team at that time. They must have been in an event, and I remember being impressed by thinking, oh wow, that's like Casper, and that's Adam, and that's Patrick, and that would be an incredible team to work for. And with a bit of luck, and I don't know what else, I happened to get the opportunity, which I jumped at. And
skill, mate, skill. You're so
May-
modest.
Maybe they just wanted me to stop abusing their product by building these awful games.
That could be.
Sort of to shut me down.
I mean, an entire website just full of Power BI games. That seems like a cool thing. Everyone who builds a Power BI game submit it and have one website that's just full, kind of like we have this Power BI site that has all the different reports, the report whatever it's called. I'm not sure what it's called. One just
Yeah,
for
I mean,
keeps.
I'd love that because I mean, I would probably spend more time, pulling apart and looking at, what someone's done and learn from some. That's a cool technique. I hadn't thought of that,
Yeah,
and I'd really enjoy doing that than perhaps looking at your standard financial business report over and over again because
it can be a little bit repetitive. Yeah, this is I think obviously a large part of my job is creating Power BI reports. I'm always happy when there's a chance to come along to create a report that isn't what would be a normal financial report. That's just lots of numbers
uh,
on a page.
I don't actually enjoy it so much. And again, this is a sort of a symptom of being part of the CAT team because the challenge there is, we work with people. Well, I work with people that can create these amazing, beautiful reports. Miguel Myers and Chris Hamill, etc. And where I used to maybe have a go at trying to create a good-looking report, I just throw my hands up now and think, anything I do is just going to look embarrassing next to these people that are just so good at what they do from the visualization front. So I do get a bit concerned when someone comes to me and say, Phil, can you actually build a Power BI report? So I'll do your DAX. I'll make your calculations, run as fast as I possibly can get them to. But let's perhaps get someone else to do the work on the canvas.
It's an amazing thing. I would literally do these chats every week just to listen to someone who, let's be honest, like since I've started working with Power BI, I've just been stealing a lot of what you've written on your blog. Copy paste that, that'll work brilliant. So to hear people who yourself, the work you've been learning from, I'll put it nicely, and of course are in a cat team that you also still have some things that you don't feel confident about. It's a pretty amazing thing to hear. What's it called again? I always this expression that people always use, but I always forget what it is. But basically, not trusting yourself. You always assume that everyone, it's especially if
Imposter
they have.
syndrome?
Thank you, imposter syndrome. I always forget words.
Uh,
Um,
I mean, I have taken full advantage. Like one of the great things about working in a team like the Power BI team is just there's so many smart people to learn from, and there's a couple of people that I have just standing weekly meetings with for no other reason that I just want to talk to them because they're super super smart, and always learn something clever. Even in the world of DAX and data modeling, I'll say I'm talking with this customer here, and here's an interesting challenge that we're working through. And I'll boil it down to something fairly succinct, and I'll talk to maybe a very senior engineer or someone very very technical, and I'll learn a ton of stuff like that. But they're not on my team. They're not someone I necessarily report to. But I've reached out and made sure I just connect with these really smart people on a regular cadence. I think I've sort of involuntarily set them up as a mentor. So that's another wonderful benefit of working in a team like the CAT team on the Power BI team. So
yeah. Look,
you can always learn more.
Jeff said, is this throwing shade at you regarding your vision? You're not a fan, Jeff, no?
Yep. No, fair enough. No, I agree with you, Jeff. I don't even bother. So in
No,
fact,
I
when Jeff
mean,
starts talking about data viz, I usually start nodding off. So
I mean, I have colleagues who work and use Power BI reports, and they have zero interest in how a report looks. Zero.
mhm.
And I can't say that. I mean, this is obviously I disagree, but they say, look, for me, I won't say a report's a report until it looks how I think that report should look. But sometimes they take the report, they'll take the data, what they want, what they need it for, and they throw it in the page, and that's them done.
Yeah.
It's
I can see
just,
both. I can see both perspectives. I think there are cases where it's really
of course,
important
yeah.
to get the viz right. I think there are other cases where it can be overdone, and
Yeah.
you end up worrying a lot more about the visual layer, and you kind of lose the point of the report. And I don't think it's that black and white. And but And you also need to appreciate that that different people, they think different ways. Some people think horizontally, other people think vertically. So just to have one prescribed way of laying out visuals and assuming that everyone will get it,
Yeah.
is not.
I think that's why you got to be careful with stuff like best practices. I mean, there are some best practice stuff that is just best practice, but I don't like it when people come out with all this best practice for how things should look visually in lots of regards. Like there's the best practices where slices should be and all this type of stuff. There are stuff that makes sense, but I think a lot of these best practices or ideas come from the assumption that all reports are the same and everyone uses reports the same way. Like if you're talking about a purely financial report, then maybe they should all follow the same structure. But there's such a wide variety of reports that people can make with Power BI, and especially if you're looking to build something that's a bit more fun. I'm just going to throw some comments up here. 3D pie charts for the win. Exactly, Johnny. I mean, 3D pie chart. Why not? Obviously, I'm joking. They're terrible. Pie charts, yes. Less 3D. And
They have their place.
say it again, sorry.
Oh, they have their place.
Yeah, if you want to use them, you use them. I'm not going to knock it. I'll not knock it a little bit. But no, I think because people have areas that they don't particularly enjoy or where they feel less confident, I think it also just kind of highlights the fact that you can, when you're using this tool, you can learn from so many different places, and it really reminds me of when I first started teaching like Power Query, where I had no idea really about the tool, just that it existed. And I was giving trainings and people were like showing me I was wrong at the same time because they opened it for the first time, they clicked on a different button, and then that worked, I mean, for me, one of the strongest things about Power BI is the fact that it's so accessible. You can just get it on your desktop within like 30 seconds and you can play with it and done, So as a tool to kind of play around with and then discover, I find it much stronger or the strongest, I would say, in that regard, without going into discussion about other tools. But basically, it has its great strength in the fact that you just go into the Microsoft Store, download the program and start working. It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it helps that you probably have, if you want to learn Power BI, that you have got, like a personal hobby or a piece of data that's meaningful to you, to play with. Even just going into your bank accounts and downloading a few months worth of your own bank transactions and bringing it into Power BI and playing with it, so you can see where you're wasting your money. And just by doing an exercise like that, never publishing it, never sharing it, you probably hopefully learn quite a lot in that short space of time about what you can do with Power BI. So
for sure. And
there's plenty of interesting data sets out there.
Say it again.
There are plenty of interesting data sets out there.
Oh, there's loads. I mean, Google it for like 10 seconds. I mean, I just want to brought this comment by Jeff, by the way. Yes, but on your personal, this is what I love about you. I have Power BI on my private laptop, So workplace, yes, I agree, it can be harder. But I think when I started using Power BI, I always had it on my personal computer. Not my work computer, is what I mean, because it's just I play with it.
I have a weather station here to keep track of the temperature and wind and stuff, and that all goes through a Power BI report that I keep track of.
That's very cool. It's a nice idea.
Oh, well, because as I said, I'm in a rural area, so my water tanks only get filled depending on how much rain falls. And I know from my rain meter how much rain has actually fallen onto my roof. And I also measure the level of my water tank, so I can tell based on how much water has actually fallen in the last hour versus how far my tank's risen, whether I've got a blockage or a problem that I need to go and clean out. So Power BI actually helps me keep track of just maintaining my house, for example. There's no real other easy tool that you can get off the shelf that will just do this particular function for me. It's flexible enough that I can just plug in my my weather data and my the Bluetooth water level monitor. So
that's brilliant. I like that.
It's a bit geeky. I had to had to create a little app to sort of intercept the weather data that was trying to send it off to the internet with a fake version of what it thought was their web server, but was my web server, to drop the data into an SQL database. And Getting a bit nerdy there.
No, that's brilliant. The nerdier the better. I the only data set that I mean, I have the fantasy football one because it's just there and it's
Oh, yep,
accessible.
yep.
Always great to use. And I mean, that's the good because it's a free API. It's open. But yeah, I mean, there are like you can get like Airbnb data sets and stuff. Apparently, Jeff likes was it a baby name
Oh,
website,
yes,
which
yes,
is
yes.
that's a new. I agree with Kerry. She seems unconvinced. Um, that's a strange one. I've never thought about a baby name data set to play around with.
It's surprisingly popular. There's a few people that have sort of gravitated towards that New Zealand baby name data set, suck it into to Power BI and find some sort of interesting trends and patterns. Names that were popular a long time ago. When did they start to tail off?
Yeah.
Whether people are more creative with boy names versus girl names. Again, it's a good learning tool.
I mean, if you connect to anything, I mean, you're right. I mean, bank statements can be a bit terrifying to connect to. Actually, you know what? Me and my wife, I say she's an accountant. She's been keeping track of our finances on her Excel since 2010,
Right.
like month by month. And we do all like the sum each month of how much we're spending and stuff. And it's really terrifying document to look at just to see how much our expenditure has gone up since 2010 to where it is now. It's just, I could put that in Power BI, but it'd be too depressing, to be honest. So,
Yeah.
but no, there's loads to do. It's quite cool. I'm just been looking around at your blog also this morning as well, by the way.
Sure.
I have to say, it's a weird thing. I know like there are algorithms that decide this sort of thing, but your tweets show up in my timeline not so frequently. I think I don't interact with you enough. I'm gonna have to start making some random comments on your tweets just to make them show up a little bit more. Because I realized that like of all the people who I kind of follow and produce a lot of work, this is going to sound really rude. I don't mean it this way, but you kind of fall under my radar the most, just simply because it's not showing up in my timeline.
Yeah, this is interesting. I was just talking about your future guest and our heavy commentator Jeff just recently. I was having a look at his tweet activity recently. I think at our last user group, and I can't remember the number. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but it was something ridiculous, like 13,000 tweets. No, that seems too high. Surely it's not that high.
For Jeff,
I'm just having a look
could
now.
be right.
I'm just having a look now.
They were all about the ideas side.
I can't see it. Where does it show? I need to put my glasses on.
He's telling.
13.3 thousand tweets. Now, he got on Twitter well and truly after me, so he's got a lot of good stuff to say. But I'm probably the opposite. I tend to use Twitter most of the time pretty much just as an extension of my professional network. So I use it to kind of look to see when other people have posted interesting topics and comments and blogs that I can go and have a bit of a look at. And the ones I like, I'll always retweet and mark that I like. And then I typically only post content there when I'm sharing content. And unfortunately, lately this year particularly, I just haven't had the opportunity to sit down and write out a blog. So I'm trying to force myself back to once every 2 weeks. But I kind of feel self-conscious. I don't think anyone really wants to know on my Twitter feed anyway. If I'm going to the shops to buy some groceries.
Oh yeah. This is. I mean, I always hope you're having a lovely day. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, sure. You kind of want to hear about the Power BI
if
stuff.
I'm tweeting more, it probably means I'm adding more content, which would hopefully be a good thing.
Makes sense.
I should put more content on. So.
No, I mean, I struggle as well. I always, my goal is always, I'll make like 2 videos a week. Like, no, one every other week is just the way it goes. But I was reading one of your blog posts. What was it about? It was about using calculation groups to not show the slicer changes until you click on. Yeah, that's what it was. I'm not going crazy. So basically, using calculation groups to basically, when you change the slicer items, they won't change until you click on the button in your calculation group.
I'm not sure if that was mine. I don't remember that one.
Really?
But it sounds like a good one.
I'm sure I'm not going crazy.
It's okay.
It's okay. I should have like saved it in my history. I'm like 95% sure it was you, but now I'm just and now the person who I think wrote it says he didn't write it. So I'm just doubting myself
Well,
massively here.
I can't remember everything I've written. I don't have a fantastic memory, and it was
Oh,
probably over a year ago.
nope.
Um,
Bernard's read it as well. See, calculation groups Bernard's read it. So
well,
fantastic.
this is not an uncommon phenomena that I've heard from many other bloggers as well. That they've put out some content over a reasonably long period of time, and then they get stuck on a problem, what feels like a very new problem, and they go do their internet search, and they land on a page that appears to have the solution. They read it, it has the solution,
Yeah,
and it's their blog. This is a bit more common than people
yeah.
realize. So maybe if I need to go do something clever with calculation groups, I might fall onto that one there. So I mean,
You
if it
can
helps.
you can just copy and paste Bernard's messages here. You set all the measures to blank and then selected measure. Yeah, this is exactly what you did.
Oh, now I know the one. Yes, yes, yes. So that came about because, again, part of my cat team, and this is quite a common pattern as well, where we go work with a customer who
Yeah.
perhaps is moving from a different tool, or they've got a mindset that they want the report to behave a certain way. And I think this particular customer, they're in direct query mode, and when they're in the Power BI desktop, every single time they're dragging fields onto the canvas, and every single time they're making even a small change, all the visuals would recalculate, and it was quite a heavy load on their backend data source. So they wanted to know, is there a way that we can have a pause button, somewhere on the desktop canvas that just cancels out all calculations, and I can just do layout stuff. I don't care about looking at the numbers yet, and I want it to be really, really snappy. Talk to Will Thompson. Have we got one of these things? No, it's a great idea. Let's get it in, and if enough people ask for it, then we'll perhaps start doing work on that. But I realized with explicit measures, then if we push it through calculation groups, yes, we can sort of artificially kill calculations by
Yeah.
putting them in this pause state. Oh yes, yeah. And I mean, in this case, the customer was quite happy. It was a bit of a roundabout hack way, and possibly it's the kind of thing that maybe I hadn't wouldn't have thought about if I wasn't doing creative game type things. So we end up. I mean, that's a case where we end up probably unblocking the customer a little bit, and they're happier, and they can do work. There might have been other solutions as well, speeding up the data source or import or whatever. But in this particular case, and a figure, and I guess the other people on the cat team are the same. They go, oh yeah, that's an interesting solution. I'll just quickly write that up on a blog and share it. So other people can hopefully benefit for that, because we do get exposed to quite interesting scenarios like that on a frequent basis. So what we learn is usually a great a driver for content about what we can share. So unless you have someone like Chris Webb, who's just been blogging every week for the last 300 years, and I think I know his backlog of ideas to blog about is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
So someone like him, he doesn't need that inspiration.
Yeah, but I mean, I think I mentioned this before, but I mean, really, like inspiration and stuff. It's always like you have a customer who has a problem, or you're working on something that has a problem, and you don't know the solution, and you have to find one, and you come up with something. There's always going to be someone who's come up with a similar solution, or might be a solution that's better for some people, but not as good for some people. But I think it's just cool having people who are coming up with solutions because they don't actually exist, and this is why I think I love the ideas side of Power BI. I mean, it's called the idea behind it.
And we talked about the cat team earlier too.
Yeah.
I have the luxury that I can just get on the call to Chris Webb or Casper de Jong or Patrick or Adam and there are loads and loads of very smart people on the team, and they're always keen to help and also learn as well. And then you just get 2 or 3 heads together, and between you, that's when you come up with that's quite a good solution. Let's try it out. And depending on the nature and the complexity of the solution, it might suit. Oh, Adam's going to do that as a guy in a Q video, or someone else will write that up, or we can pop it into a white paper or something like that. So because we are very, very small, and we just have to be able to scale by trying to get this information out there as much as we can and as wide as we can. So
I'm going to feel another Jeffrey question because I like this question. I mean, they're all good questions, but this one, what's something you're most proud that you've got out of the Power BI product? Cool, I like it. I'm also curious.
I did quite a lot of work, particularly last year, around the automatic aggregations or the usage-based aggregations, and I had the luxury, or got quite hands-on with the tools and the algorithms to help decide, what aggregation would be a good one to generate. And this is a very big, complex product that's still just only really starting to roll out now. And I can see that going to have massive benefits, particularly for medium and large data models. So that and I was lucky enough to actually write some code locally that made its way, I think, eventually into the product, which is a bit of a buzz. Probably more recently, helping out with the Power BI Premium Gen 2 app, trying to make that in a way that is useful to a whole variety of different capacity administrators, because it's something that we've struggled with, and I don't think we've got it 100% right, but I think it's definitely getting closer and moving in the right direction. And it's always nice to see work that I'm doing locally, in my machine, make its way into that sort of environment. Probably the two things that spring to mind. There's definitely others, because that's the other wonderful thing about the CAT team. We're not siloed to just a function. We do get borrowed and brought into all sorts of interesting project, and you can definitely help influence the shape and layout of a feature in that way, which is always neat.
I always find it's interesting that the things that you said about the CAT team, because I didn't realize that a part of what they're doing was basically collecting, maybe not requirements, but things that these key customers, the large customers, require, and kind of they get added to the potentially get added to Power BI. My question is, how do they actually make contact the customers? Yeah.
Well, generally, we're dealing with a very large customer, so we've probably already got a pretty established relationship with these big customers. There's probably a team of accounts or salespeople within Microsoft already working with those customers across a variety of tools. Not just Power BI necessarily. But if they start using Power BI or showing interest in Power BI, then they do get a bit of a shortcut to the Power BI team, and it's generally someone from the CAT team, the customer, as I said, advocate team, that will first of all probably talk to the local Microsoft team working with that customer to just see what sort of help and support might be useful, and then perhaps maybe get on some calls, just try and understand where they're coming from, what they're trying to do. We can give them hopefully best practice advice, point them in the right direction, suggest if they need this kind of training, or maybe we can give them access to some more advanced techniques. We've got a lot of programs that help them learn more about what's coming up on the roadmap, what we're doing with the strategy, where we're going. But importantly, as I said, we try and listen as much as possible. As much as we're trying to help customers, we're also trying to learn from these customers, what's blocking them, what they're and we aggregate this information across a variety of customers, because obviously if we speak to 20 different organizations and 15 of them are, I wouldn't say the word complaining, but mention, hey, wouldn't it be really great if Power BI could do function X? Then we can go to the people in the Power BI team that look after perhaps that area and say, we've got some empirical data that backs up this real evidence. This isn't just what we think. This isn't just what we feel. We've got evidence that shows that these 15 organizations would enjoy using Power BI a lot more if we were able to change or add or change this feature. And then we advocate, we lobby, and then all going well. When the feature PMs are making their decisions about because they've got finite resource. They've only got a certain amount of developers and money that they could spend. And I suspect if you had a look at the wish list on every single feature PM in the Power BI team, it's probably a factor of 100 times more than what they can actually invest and spend. So they got to be smart about, what they do, and if it's going to directly help customers, in this particular way, you've just got this communication channel that the cat team play a very big part on.
It's cool.
And the people on the cat team do have a lot of experience on this, so they kind of get very quickly what the challenges are and the problems, and usually just we can play our little part in hoping to get I don't know if you've seen the release list. If you go back, there's some slides on some various decks that show every single feature that's shipped in Power BI, say in the last 2 years, and it's just exhausting reading it. So
yeah, no,
and it's on a roll. It's getting better. It's very exciting. It's a wonderful ride to be on. So I'm very privileged.
I can imagine it must be very good fun, challenging but very good fun. And the thing, what you mentioned also about the new features that are rolled out, it always kind of makes me laugh, because it is a huge amount of new features pushed out, and so many. I mean, sometimes you have a month where there's not as much, but even when it's not as much, there's always like a lot. But every single time there's something released, there's always people saying, "Oh, it's released, but we still don't have this." I'm one of them. I know I do the same thing with the IntelliSense, So it must be quite frustrating sometimes to be rolling out so much, but to still have a backlog, or people just kind of from different directions saying, "Yes, but we still want this. Yes, but we still want this."
Actually, I've got a funny story about that one too. I don't know if I'm allowed to tell this, so just keep it between me and the audience.
The internet, yeah.
Next month we might be getting Sparklines, maybe. Just and going back to earlier this year, I think it was January, and I had a message from someone in my team who said, "Oh, look, a very, very senior person on the Power BI team wants to just connect with someone who knows a little about SVG and knows a little bit about DAX. Do you know anyone, Phil?" So, okay, I can possibly help with that. What's up? And it turned out they had been looking at the Ideas site. And as everyone probably knows, one of the top ideas on the Ideas site is the ability to add Sparklines. This is something that Jeff has been quite passionate about. So they said, see how it's done in Excel. What would be involved in getting that, doing something similar in Power BI? And I had a look at the implementation in Excel. There's if you go to the ribbon and you can sort of see the graphics and the features and the properties that you can set there. And probably about 2 or 3 hours later, I had emailed back to this person a prototype or proof of concept. And as far as I can tell, that was that's fantastic. Let's use that as the got given to the proper development team, and spent probably the year in the queue getting ready, but fairly shortly, and I've seen from the internal blogs that we get to see, the draft versions of the blog that is going to be ready to go out. It's like a screenshot. Hey, that's the Power BI file I built back in January on a Sunday afternoon when I was just kicking around, that came through fairly quickly. So that was pretty satifying. Now, that might make it sound like we only spend an hour or two building these features that get shipped. That's not what I'm saying. But when, the work I did that got given to the proper development team to actually make it stay, solid and robust and out there. But, to me, it just looks still like the version that I knocked up back in January. So, that sort of thing is pretty fun and satisfying. When you can have that much, not influence, but
I mean, if it's one of the most, as you said, it's one of the most requested features in Power BI, and there you go, Phil Seamark knocks it out in 2 hours on a Sunday afternoon.
Don't hold me to it. Don't tell anyone. Don't tweet about it. But we might see Sparklines in the November desktop release, and when you do look at that, it was probably me sitting there with some honey in the background, looking out over my local.
Does that mean I have to edit this live stream so no one can access this video anymore?
No, it's fine.
I'll just do like a beep noise for like 5 minutes.
It's done now, so
it's the first ever reveal on this Connect Live chat. So there you go. This is a fantastic new thing. The first.
At least I've given you something. So
you've given me so much, mate. So much. I've very much enjoyed the chat. We've gone over time, by the way. Not that's a problem for me, but not as a bad thing going over time. But just so you know, we can wind it up now. because we've spoken about quite a lot of stuff. And it's been, for me, as always, a very pleasant
Cool.
experience.
Thanks for doing this series. It looks like you've had some really interesting people on, and next week will be a lot of fun, I'm sure, with Jeff. So, and yeah,
Yes.
hopefully you can keep this going. And it's nice to see the people in the community, because one of the really, really amazing things about the Power BI is the community. It's very positive, very vibrant. Everyone's really, really supportive. Everyone's learning.
Yeah.
I think there are some other tech communities that perhaps have maybe a little more toxic. So I do love the Power BI community, and
Yeah.
it keeps growing and growing and growing. Our numbers are just.
I agree. I think for me, the two strongest parts about Power BI is how easy to get it on your computer and the community. As you say, I mean, I can't really add much to what you said. It's a fantastic thing. It's very pleasant. Everyone's very friendly. And for me, doing these are really good fun because I kind of get to know everyone a bit better. And I hope that the people in the chat are kind of doing the same as well. So yeah, thank you for joining me this week. It's been awesome. I will.
No worries. Thanks for everyone who jumps on and everyone who watches this.
Yeah, thanks for all the comments and the questions. It's always good fun. And we'll be back next week, same time, and also back to New Zealand. Same town, right?
Exactly. Yes. He's only 20 minutes or 30 minutes up the road, near the airport. Ask him about the airport. So.
Ask him at the airport. Okay, there you go. Fantastic. That's the first topic for next week, airports. All right, cool.
Thank you.
So
Bye-bye.
thank you very much, everyone. Take care and see you next Thursday. Bye-bye.